Zomby!
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Zomby album with Love. Zomby is a UK-based electronic music producer. This is his third full-length album, With Love. It is his longest effort yet, 33 tracks, spanning 2 discs, over an hour of music, which I guess a lot of people have been up in arms about, but I, however, have been really looking forward to listening to this thing. I don't really mind long albums, obviously, but I haven't really fallen head over heels for Zomby's earlier stuff either. His full-length debut, Where Were You in '92, was a pretty decent tribute to breakbeat electronics. You can really tell the dude has an attentive ear with how well he was able to recreate this style of music. And his next full-length album, Dedication, was a big change of pace, but much more abstract, spacious, bare. I mean, really so uneventful that I really couldn't connect with it in any way whatsoever emotionally. Despite all the genre hopping from future garage to UK bass, a little bit of dubstep, breakbeats, and now on this LP, trap, Zomby is actually pretty consistent emotionally. He really likes to keep his sounds sort of on the darker, more shadowy side of things. And it's not really because of a use of heavy or distorted sounds, anything like that. He really prefers to keep things atmospheric, lots of reverb and tons of space in the synths and the drum sequencing. His beat production tends to be very minimal, sort of skeletal, but still very, very moody and evocative. That is definitely, I think, the strongest characteristic that With Love has going for it. Even though Zomby's productions are still very subtle, I do find this collection of tracks to be a little more enjoyable than Dedication, especially on some of the better trap-flavored tracks on this album, with the incredibly resonant bass kicks and the twittering hi-hats, the staccato bleeping and blooping synthesizers. All of these elements together do have a particular charm to them, and Zomby definitely can ride a groove. But just like Dedication, With Love really feels like a mixed bag of tracks, with songs of various lengths. Some end pretty abruptly. Maybe the whole mixed bag thing was a bit more manageable on Dedication, which was much shorter, but now we're talking about spanning 2 discs with it, which again, I guess isn't a bad thing if the songs themselves stand up. But the extreme similarity of a lot of the tracks on this LP makes With Love a slight bore at times. There are a handful of notable artists over the past year or so who have worked to nocturnalize the trap music sound, my favorite of them being Shlomo with his recent EP. And Zomby is a part of that trend too, and he approaches this trend, again, with that very minimal style that I mentioned. And that's got its pros and its cons. One of the cons being that there aren't very bold or interesting differences between the songs on this 33-track album, to the point where when a song ends, it's like, oh, bam, another track really begun, wow. There are some songs that just crash in or fade out into the next song, and stylistically, sometimes they're so similar that they might as well be the same track. Like the tracks Digital Smoke or Entropy Sketch on the second disc here, they literally sound like slightly different versions of the same exact song. However, I guess a pro is that this very seamless flow and similar emotion going into every single track does create a very uniform and chilled out listening experience. There are moments where this album comes off as being slightly creepy, but for the most part it's relaxing with its ethereal synthesizers and really thick bass kicks. There are a few standouts to me on this album. The track If I Will, for example, which has all these breathy vocal samples, and this thumb piano melody, which is really sweet, catchy, kind of angular, it really jumps out at me. And the song Overdose is one of the better pieces of breakbeat on this album, really one of the darkest pieces of breakbeat Zomby has ever pulled together. I love how he takes the really busy drum sample and brings it together with some weird atmospheric sound effects that are just twisted and littered all over the mix in the left and the right. It's really an interesting experience on headphones. But the thing is with this album, every time I find a track that I think I really like, a little further down the road, I find another track that has a somewhat uncanny resemblance. Even though there are good songs on here that I feel that I can totally extract out of With Love's track list and listen to by themselves over the course of this hour-long album, Zombie's really plain, untreated 808s and generically eerie synthesizer tones and phrasing really lose their appeal. And it's not that I don't like the styles of music that Zombie is playing with or think that there isn't potential in what he's doing. There most definitely is. I just think much of the time in these songs, Zombie's sequencing and songwriting, beat writing, it's all so overly simplified and shallow that it becomes pretty homogeneous. And not in a way that makes all the tracks feel like they're linked together for some kind of greater purpose. This album just feels like a fat pocket full of loose change. For sure it has value, but who wants to carry around $40 worth of pennies? What really would have made this album interesting across its hour-long runtime is if Zombie threw some diversity into this thing. I feel that over the hour-long runtime of this LP, he doesn't really take a risk. I can't even say that the length of this LP is a risk, considering all of the miscellaneously assembled beat tapes that are floating around Bandcamp now, some of which I would recommend much more highly than With Love. I do like Zombie's sounds on this LP, it's just that they wear thin and they lose novelty because there's just not that many of them, in my opinion. I do think, though, that this album throughout does have a very strong, consistent, and potent mood. But if you're planning on doing any incredibly intent listening to With Love, you might end up slightly underwhelmed. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. If you've given it a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. This review is my opinion. If you don't like it, here's a straw. I want to give a shout out to graduates, Everything Bites, and people who think I have too many catchphrases at the end of my videos. Hey, listen, you don't have to watch